Sunday, April 30th, 1939, dawned bright and sunny in New York City. But by lunchtime, a lid of low, dark clouds had clamped over the city, and soon it was steadily pelting rain. Knowing what we know now, the writer James Morrow noted in his book, Twilight at the World of Tomorrow, it's hard not to see this shift in the weather as ominously portentous. April 30th was the day for the grand opening of the 1939 New York World's Fair. Starting in 1936, 60 nations, dozens of corporations, some of New York's finest architects and designers, and an army of workers had pitched in to transform an ash dump in Flushing Meadows, Queens, into a heroic, soaring vision of a utopian future, a world of peace and harmony, rocket ships and robots, orderly ribbons of highway, and glittering forests of skyscrapers. The fair's organizers, a consortium of New York businessmen and political operatives who conceived the fair back when the Depression was still grinding on, predicted an opening day crowd of 1 million. But the wet crowd was at best half that. Some said no more than 200,000. With Boy Scouts ranked behind him, President Franklin D. Roosevelt told the crowd that the eyes of the United States are fixed on the future. Our wagon is hitched to a star. It is a star of goodwill, a star of progress for mankind, a star of greater happiness and less hardship, and, above all, a star of peace. Miles of newsreel film had been shot of FDR by then, but this was the first time a president was televised. The infant NBC television network had a single camera there and transmitted the event to an estimated 200 receivers in a 50-mile radius, including one at Radio City. The total audience was estimated at about 1,000. The fair is remembered today for its wonderful Trilon and Perisphere and Futurama, but there was a lot more going on there. There was, for instance, a whole entertainment zone that was far less high-minded. It included the Little Miracle Town, featuring 125 little people, Frank Buck's Jungle Land, a menagerie of exotic animals, a freak show called Strange as It Seems, the Sun Worshippers Colony, where visitors could ogle topless women sitting around pretending to be at a nudist colony, and more topless ladies at Jack Sheridan's Living magazine covers. More eye-popping still was Salvador Dali's Dream of Venus Pavilion, with nude beauties swimming and cavorting in a surrealist undersea setting that some wag dubbed 20,000 Legs Under the Sea. There were other ominous portents that day besides the gloomy weather. Of the 60 nations that originally signed up to participate in the fair, 3 were missing when the fair opened. 2 had recently disappeared as independent states. Hitler had annexed Austria in March of 1938, then, just 6 weeks before the fair opened, invaded and conquered Czechoslovakia. Germany itself had originally signed up for the fair, but withdrew, at least partly because of harsh and relentless criticism from Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia, who, from early on, had railed against Hitler as a perverted maniac and brown-shirted fanatic. The Nazi press in Germany howled, calling LaGuardia a dirty Talmud Jew, a Jewish lout, a procurer, and master of gangsters. The German ambassador in Washington issued a formal complaint. Secretary of State Cordell Hull apologized and asked Roosevelt to rein in his friend the mayor. But the next time LaGuardia visited the White House, FDR grinned, shot out his arm in the Nazi salute, and said, "Heil, Fiorello." "Heil, Franklin," LaGuardia responded. And then there was Einstein's speech. In 1938, Albert Einstein had agreed to be the honorary chair of the fair's Science Advisory Committee. As the fair took shape, it became increasingly obvious that there would be little of his kind of pure theoretical science on display. To the fair's corporate exhibitors, Westinghouse, DuPont, AT&T, and such, science meant wondrous industrial and consumer products like plexiglass, nylon stockings, air conditioning, and a robot named Electro. By opening day, Einstein had soured on the whole thing as mere hucksterism for gizmos and gadgets. Still, he had agreed to appear at the day's final ceremony, the dramatic switching on of the fair's fluorescent lights, another new wonder product. The idea was that Einstein would deliver a brief talk on cosmic rays. As he did, 10 beams of light representing the rays would gradually light the Trilon from bottom to top. Then he'd throw the switch, and all the fair's fluorescents would bang on together. Only straggling pockets of fairgoers had stuck it out through the wet afternoon to see and hear the world's most famous scientist. The damp loudspeakers crackled in the gloom and garbled his already thickly accented speech. Then, when he pulled the switch, the fair's generators overloaded and threw the entire fairgrounds into a total blackout. The world of tomorrow was off to a bumpy start. In September 1939, as the fair's first season was drawing to a close, Germany invaded another participating nation, Poland. Within weeks, Germany and the Soviet Union had divided the country. 2 more nations at the fair, England and France, declared war. When the fair shut down that October, the peaceful, orderly future it had so boldly and beautifully envisioned now looked less like a forecast than a forlorn hope. The World's Fair, like the world itself, was in shambles when it reopened in May 1940. That April, the German Blitzkrieg had begun, and German forces were galloping across Western Europe. 10 nations did not reopen their pavilions in May, most of them because they were now in Nazi hands. Finland, overrun by the Soviets, closed its pavilion as well. By July 1940, Hitler had established dominion over virtually all of Western Europe, and his Luftwaffe was bombing England in preparation for an invasion. On July 1st, someone called in a bomb threat to the British pavilion at the fair. Police found nothing. 2 days later, an electrician found a small canvas bag. It was ticking. Incredibly, he did nothing about it. It was still there and still ticking the next day, Thursday, July 4th. He carried the bag to a supervisor, who carried it to another, who showed it to yet another, who finally alerted the police. The 2 detectives who arrived carried the bag out a back door to a relatively remote spot behind the black-draped Polish pavilion. Kneeling on the ground over the bag, they cut away a small section of the canvas and saw sticks of dynamite inside. And then it blew up. The 2 detectives died instantly, horribly mangled by a blast that left a crater 3 feet deep and 5 wide. 5 others were injured, 2 of them critically. The police rounded up known Nazi sympathizers around the city, and the city posted a reward that eventually reached $26,000. But weeks and then months passed with no break in the case. It remains unsolved today. At the end of October 1940, the fair that had opened, forecasting a world of peace and prosperity, limped to a demoralized close in a world at war.